Hello and welcome to Illini Drive. Man, what a good day. It's always a good day whenever we're on the air. This is so fun. I'm Eli Schuster. I'm joined alongside Brian Binns, Isaac Trotter, and our lovely producer, Tati Perry. Tati, say hi.
What's up?
Yes. Love to get Tati to speak those words as much as we can. We got a good show. This is going to be a lot of fun. We have plenty to talk about. It's homecoming weekend for the University of Illinois, and there's going to be a football game being played on Saturday back here in Champaign. It's been 2 weeks since Illinois has been playing a home football game, and they're playing against the Purdue Boilermakers. It'll be an interesting matchup. I think we got a lot to talk about there. They're heading into this game with a winning record.
First time ever in Lovie Smith's tenure that Illinois has a winning record in October.
Yes, but Illinois has not won a homecoming game since 2014. So this will be a feat to overcome for them. And they're playing a pretty decent Boilermaker team. You may look at their record. They had a slow start to the year, but this is a pretty talented team. They got a lot of talent, so we'll get into that. Also, football related, we're going to have to talk a little bit about the departure of just a player for Illinois, right? Just a guy, but Bennett Williams, probably, we've talked about it on this show, the most talented and best player on this Illinois football team. He has been dismissed from the team for violation of team rules, and he was also suspended for the first 3 games of this season for the same reasons, and he's out of here. So we're going to have to get into that, talk about what that means for this team moving forward. And then we're going to talk a little bit Illinois basketball up in Chicago today, actually in Rosemont. I don't like how they say Chicago. For someone who's from there, it's in Rosemont.
How dare they?
It's in Rosemont. It's like saying you're from, it's like Evanston and everything when you say you're from Chicago, but actually Evanston. It's in Rosemont, so it's closer to O'Hare, the airport, than it is anything. But they are at Big Ten Media Day, and Brad Underwood went. He spoke today. Trent Frazier and Aaron Jordan are both up there to represent the Fighting Illini, and that'll be a. There's lots that came out of that today, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the couple weeks heading into this season, and they're going to be heading to Maui soon enough. To be playing in that tournament, and things are coming up close for Illinois basketball.
Patrick Ewing and Georgetown will be making their way to Champaign. That'll be really fun.
There's a lot of excitement to talk about, so we'll get into Illinois basketball a little bit, and then towards the end of the show we can talk a little NFL. We got Thursday Night Football tonight between the Giants and the Eagles. That'll be maybe a good game. Who knows? It's Thursday Night Football, so it's always a question mark. But this Sunday, there's going to be a lot of fun games. The Bears are playing. Once again, they're coming off their bye week. So Mitch Trubisky will be wearing that arm sleeve, trying to throw another 6 touchdowns. And we can talk a little NFL at the end of the show. But I think first, there's the big thing that we need to talk to. It's Illinois homecoming weekend. They haven't won that homecoming game since 2014. They got a chance right now with a winning record, 3-2 against Purdue. What are our thoughts on this game coming up? And do we expect this to be a win for this team?
Look, I think that this is as big of a game as Lovie Smith will ever have in his tenure here.
Second week in a row.
Yeah, we say that every single week, it seems.
It does, but I think that shows what the magnitude of this season is for Lovie Smith. And when we're talking about that,
even these 3 years,
right? And so this is a huge game for Illinois. Illinois has to go out and prove if they can get over the hump this weekend and beat a Purdue team that they're kind of similar-ish with in talent. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal for this team. Get you at 4-2 halfway through the season and puts a really good chance for you to make a bowl game. So this is going to be a really big game for Illinois. I'm interested to see how this Illinois defense maybe changes up scheme-wise against a Purdue team that can really pass the ball. I mean, Rondale Moore can do a lot of things for Purdue. He's the electrifying freshman. He had 313 all-purpose yards against Northwestern in the season opener. That was a Purdue record. So this is a kid that can do a lot of things for you on the field. He's a dangerous weapon that the Illinois secondary will have to account for all day.
Yeah, and I think that this Purdue team, for me personally, I think this is going to be a really tough game for Illinois. At the beginning of the season, I kind of circled this one, and I said that because a lot of people commented on this easy or Big Ten schedule for this team, and it's completely true. Any year that you're not playing Michigan State, Ohio State, these teams, then it's a pretty light Big Ten schedule for you. But I think Purdue, and this is the game at the beginning of the season, even with Purdue's kind of woes that they had at the beginning of the year, I like this Purdue team. I think there's a lot of talent when you have two quarterbacks that can make things happen, especially against this Illini defense that has struggled even more so than the offense. There's just a lot of talent here for this Purdue team, and it could be I think it's going to be a very close game, and it's going to be interesting because I do think, Isaac, you bring it up that there are similarities, and I think they match up well. But I think that when you look at this schedule for the rest of the season, this could be one of the hardest games that they have left to play. And I think that the other team that's in that is the Northwestern. Northwestern's going to be a tough game for them to play as well.
Of course.
Well, Wisconsin,
and
yeah.
Iowa.
But and Iowa will be tough. But I think that Purdue, honestly, this is one of those games that will be one of the harder ones left for them to pull off.
And I think the reason that we're talking about this is at the beginning of the year, we looked at Purdue and we thought, okay, they're going to be not as good as they were last year in their first year under Jeff Brom. But Jeff Brom has proven that he can really coach up this offense. And what he has turned David Blau into, their quarterback, is pretty remarkable. And if you didn't know, at the beginning of the year, Purdue was playing two quarterbacks, Elijah Sindelar and David Blau. And Sindelar threw 3 interceptions in their first game against Northwestern. Blau's come in. He's thrown for 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception. He's passing for the third most yards per game in all of Big Ten, so at 269 yards a game. He can really sling it, and he's got some weapons too. And this Purdue defense we know isn't very good, and they're kind of similar to where Illinois is.
It's a very similar situation.
Yeah, like they're very similar to where Illinois is defensively. Purdue is just slightly better statistically in most of the categories, but again, it's really razor thin. The thing that Purdue does well is they get after the quarterback, which Illinois doesn't do, but Illinois takes the ball away, which is what Purdue doesn't do. So like they're so like these teams, you look at them, you go, man, they're real similar.
Well, there's a lot of things that, and you bring it up, there's some things that Purdue are good at that Illinois is bad at, and vice versa, and those things kind of cancel each other out to make this a very interesting matchup. And I think that we bring up those takeaways, and Binns, you can comment on this. Illinois is second in the nation in interception percentage in games, right? I think
Illinois leads the Big Ten with 10
They lead the Big Ten, yeah, but they have, I think they're averaging 2 per game right now.
Right.
And, so you're getting this Lovey ball, you're getting this defense that you need, but against a Purdue team who has a quarterback who's playing very, very well, he's the type of quarterback that minimizes those mistakes, and he's going to be possibly you have Blake Burnett, who was a good quarterback. They played against USF. That was a really good showing, and they actually played really well against him. And you have McSorley on Penn State, who they matched up against. McSorley they managed him for a little while, and then he broke loose.
Yeah,
then he completely broke loose.
Miles Sanders gave you a few more trouble than McSorley did.
Yeah, and so, Binns, how do you think they prepare for this Purdue offense and for the secondary, who now is absent of Bennett Williams, who they have been all year, so it's not like that he has been really playing with this team. But just knowing he's gone, and they did a secondary shuffle in that last game where we saw Tony Adams move to safety. And what can they do to try and hold back this Purdue offense?
Yeah, for me, this game reminds me a lot of the Penn State game, where you look at this Purdue offense and they've got a lot of playmakers and they got a lot of guys and Jeff Brom is a really aggressive offensive coach. He likes to take shots down the field. He likes to get big chunk plays. And that was the same thing I said before Penn State, is that you're going to have to stop these big plays. Rondale Moore is a guy who can go all the way to the end zone on any given play, much like Miles Sanders for Penn State. And they've got a quarterback who can kind of sling the ball a little bit like Trace McSorley. So I think those takeaways are going to be huge, and we saw it against Penn State. When they forced turnovers, they were able to keep the game close. They're able to give their offense the ball in positive situations. From there, you let Rod Smith kind of do his magic. You let A.J. Bush, who's probably, I'd assume, is starting this game, and their crew of running backs kind of control the game on the ground. But if you don't force turnovers, you're probably going to end up with another situation like Penn State, where they're going to be able to do what they want with the ball on the ground and in the air, and making big chunk plays and really kind of taking the wind out of this building, which is probably going to be, I'd assume, going to be a good crowd. Homecoming weekend, you just had that big win over Rutgers.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of positive momentum around this program right now, so I'd assume there's going to be a good showing on Saturday. And I really do think that this is a great opportunity for Illinois to beat a team that a lot of people, I would say, before the year maybe looked at this game and said that's probably going to be a loss, because Purdue had a good year last year, much better than Illinois did, and they have some continuity and added in some new players. So I think a win this weekend would be really big, coming off that Rutgers win, kind of string together some positive energy to move into the rest of your season.
Well, you go from having no Big Ten wins,
right,
to getting 2 in a row, which is huge.
let's put this in perspective. Nobody on the roster has been a part of a team that's won back-to-back Big Ten games.
Exactly.
It's been that long. And so this is a huge game. And really the onus for me is on Lovie Smith and Hardy Nickerson to change their defensive scheme a little bit. I get sitting back in coverage and doing what they've done and letting teams dink and dunk you a little bit. But Purdue doesn't just dink and dunk, because Rondale Moore and DJ Knox, a really good running back, are really good at breaking tackles. And open field tackling
they put the dunk and dink and dunk.
Right. So, and that's the thing. You're going to have to dial up some pressure if your defensive ends aren't able to get the pressure on David Blau. Bobby Roundtree's had a solid year. 3 sacks through the first 5 games is pretty solid. Yeah. But they have not gotten any, from anywhere pressure on the quarterback from any of their other defensive ends. So you're going to have to dial up some blitzes. I'd like to see some nickel blitzes, especially if Cam Watkins is at nickel. I think he's a guy who can really be versatile there. And then also Dele Harding's a kid who every time that he blitzes the quarterback, good things happen. They stopped on 4th down. He blitzed last week against Rutgers and got him off the field. He forced an interception last week too when he blitzed. So interesting dynamic there with the secondary if they're going to come up and play press coverage and let these linebackers blitz, look at the quarterback a little bit more, just to dial up a little bit more pressure. And that's what I want to see from Hardy Nickerson.
Yeah, and I think that's the only scary thing about that is if it's not perfectly executed, if it's not well executed,
sure,
you're giving up those big plays that we just talked about. And
but at one point, you have to trust your secondary to make a play.
But I completely understand that. I think just to play devil advocate to that a little bit is to say, if you blow that, or if these guys are not ready for that and they can't pull that off, then this game can even get away from you faster than sticking with a similar defensive scheme that you've shown. And I think that pressure is extremely important. I mean, there's nothing to say, especially against this Purdue offense. For me, it's about the defensive ends. The guys that are naturally supposed to be putting pressure on the quarterback really need to take that step and really need to make sure they're doing that this game. For me, I get a little worried with taking that secondary or getting a little too fancy with some of these guys who've already been shuffled around, who are already so young, and say, all right, let's try to get this press coverage. Maybe, do it 1 or 2 times in the game, but it's a situation where you could really give up a big play if it goes wrong, and that could really, really take all of the energy out of that building.
I see what you're saying for sure, but I think right now with Nate Hobbs back and in the rotation, and with Jartavius Martin and with Cam Watkins at corner, the guys that are going to be playing press coverage are the best cornerbacks on your team. It's not like Illinois is trotting out Cam Watkins and Delano Ware at the nickel and Jartavius Martin at corner, who's only played a few games. Jartavius Martin has proved to everyone else that he can play at this level. Now it's time to trust them a little bit more. And of course, you're not going to dial up blitzes every single time, but it needs to be a part of the package a little bit more. But at the end of the day, what Hardy Nickerson's scheme is of sitting back and letting guys or forcing quarterbacks, kind of baiting quarterbacks to throw into tight windows. It's worked so far through the first 5 games.
I think it's been working.
At times, it did work well against Blake Barnett. I know he threw for like 400 yards, but yards are yards. They only scored 25 points that game. And if you take away one big play, Illinois probably wins that game. So it's a really interesting thing to see this Saturday. I'm really excited to see Sidney Brown and Tony Adams at safety get a little bit more comfortable. Excited to see Nate Hobbs and Jartavius Martin and Cam Watkins go up against some big play receivers that Purdue has.
But here's the thing we can talk as much as we want about what we want to see, but at the end of the day, unless this coaching staff sees that they can't, unless this coaching staff feels like the matchup against Purdue allows them to bring these blitzes, they're not going to go away from what they've done the last couple of years.
Correct. Yes.
How many times have we seen defensive coaches completely change up their style? It never happens.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Lovie Smith has made a living out of playing this style of kind of lay back, make offenses sustain drives and then jump on those opportunities when they mess up. And that's, I think, a style that really helps when you have a lot of talent on the field. While Illinois doesn't have that right now, I still don't think we're going to see Lovie Smith and Hardy Nickerson completely change up what they've done and what they think helps this team be successful.
And again, this is going to be a shootout, and I expect this game to, I expect Purdue and Illinois to be both scoring in the 30s. I think that's going to be a realistic thing.
That's kind of the year it's been so far.
Right. It's up to Rod, which is weird. I never would have thought that this would happen. But it's up to Rod Smith to be able to get this offense, be able to get more. I want to see more consistency in this passing game. I think you know what you're going to get in the run game. But if you can dial up a little bit more consistency in this pass game, I think you could see the Illinois offense reach levels it hasn't got to yet.
Yeah, I think the pass. We could talk a little bit more about this after the break, but I think the next step now for this offense is have AJ Bush throw the ball a little bit more and get these receivers working because you got some talent there, and you gotta show it. So make sure you stick with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU. I'm Eli Schuster, and I'm joined alongside Brian Binns, Isaac Trotter, and producer Tati Perry. Producer Tati Perry, go.
What's up?
Oh
Lovely.
my God, we've got her at it. We've got her to say something
Second
twice.
time in a show. I always try to get Tati to say some words. It's great. All right, so before the break, we were talking about Illinois football, addressing this weekend's game against Purdue, talking about what they need to do, slowing down this Purdue offense. There's a lot of steps that they need to continue to take to be competitive in this game. But I think something, and we'll give our score predictions for that game after we talk about this point. Bennett Williams, Illinois safety, ESPN freshman All-American safety, is gone from this team. He's been kicked off this team. He's been dismissed. He's been released, whatever way you want to say it. I always love reading the headlines after these stories come out because everyone's just like, okay, I don't want to say the same thing that person did. So yeah, what the verbs are. So dismissed, released, kicked off, whatever you want to say.
Expelled.
He's violated team rules one too many times, and he's off this team. He was suspended for the first 3 games of the season, along with fellow sophomores Kermani Green and Lou Dorsey.
And Deion Pate.
And Deion Pate. And Deion Pate is a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, redshirt freshman.
Well, yeah, but I was saying he was fellow sophomores.
Right.
So he has no more Illinois time left for him. And so let's talk a little bit about what we think this means for this team. We've said multiple times on this show, he is the most talented player on this team. He's the number 1 player on this team. And that guy's gone now.
It's sad. That's really the only way that it can go because at the end of the day, Illinois crushed this recruitment. No one else offered him. He had no other Power 5 offers. And Illinois went and found the diamond in the rough. And when you're a program like Illinois, who had all of the terrible things that have happened with Tim Beckman, you start 5-19 under Lovie Smith in your first 2 years, you have to capitalize on this. And Illinois crushed this recruitment. And then Bennett Williams let them down. And he let them down repeatedly by making the same mistake over and over again. You violate team rules. That's Lovie Smith's standard. From the top of the guy like Bennett Williams to the third-string defensive tackle like Deion Pate. And if you violate a rule, there's going to be consequences. And actually, at this point, with Lovie Smith's standard, I really like it. Because if you let one thing slide and you go tell Bennett Williams, hey, you can stay on the team. I know you've messed up 3 times, but you can stay on the team because you're a freshman All-American safety. Yeah. You know what that leads to? It leads to Penn State and Ohio State happening and Baylor happening because at that time, rules were fudged then, and things got let slide at those situations. Because what did Baylor have? They had 56 guys that were accused of sexual assault.
The whole program.
That didn't start. That started with one guy.
Yeah.
With one guy letting that slide.
56 guys didn't all of a sudden just get in trouble all at once.
So with this scenario and with Lovie Smith having the high standard that you have, this is the thing that you're going to have. If you're going to have people that are going to buy into what you're going to do and follow the rules, then you're going to have a program that's run the right way. But sometimes when you run a program the right way, you're going to have people in your program. You have 105 guys on this team. Not every single one is perfect. Bennett Williams let this team down. And unfortunately, he'll never play another snap in Illinois. And it's a really unfortunate situation because he's a heck of a player. He's a heck of an interview. You really enjoy talking to him. And he's a guy that could have really helped you in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that it too. This is a situation where some people, and Illinois fans, some people might bring up you really got to let him go, or have this feeling of regret.
Winning, right?
Yeah, they have this regret of letting him go. But I agree with you, Isaac, when you bring up that this is something that you have to do, and I completely agree with the decision. And I will say I've been pleasantly surprised with the reactions from people. They see he's gone and they say, oh, that's a loss for the program, but they understand it because they say, when a lot of people seem to understand when you see due to violation of team rules, right? They say, well, that's their fault. And so a lot of people could use this as a way to say, oh, target Lovie, target the program, say, how could you be doing this to the program, things like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's good that people are respecting. If you violate team rules, you're off. And if you do it too many times, which people knew that he did, you're off.
This was 3 times in 4 months.
Yeah, and so you have to take that step. And also, if you're Lovie Smith, who's trying to build a culture here, and you might be 3-2 right now, and people might think things are heading in a winning direction. It doesn't matter. You're not done with this rebuild. You're still rebuilding, and to get that culture set in place, this is a big moment for him. And he did what he needed to do, and he said, Bennett, you're gone.
And it's a scenario where, from the outside, it's not a good look when your best player in your program gets kicked off. But at the end of the day, it's what Illinois had to do. And I respect Lovie Smith, and I respect the staff. And let's be honest, there was some friction between Bennett Williams and the staff long before this season started. If you don't remember last year, he sat out a game. We didn't get addressed to that at all. It was a one-game suspension. Then during training camp, he was getting extremely irritated with the number of reps he was getting in training camp. You and me know he was suspended for the first 3 games. They're kind of getting other guys opportunities ready for those first 3 games because they need him. But at that point, he was getting frustrated with the coaching staff. And I've had multiple conversations with Bennett. I talked to Lovie Smith about it. This is a scenario that couldn't be helped anymore. And their rules are rules. And the policy is 3 strikes, you're out. And it was 3 strikes in 4 months.
And guess what? Even as much as we talk about how big the Lovie hiring was as far as like national attention and kind of that pedigree that he brought, this is almost one of the biggest reasons why they hired him, coming off the kind of Beckman absolute disaster, as a guy of high moral character and a guy who wasn't afraid to make these kind of hard decisions and a guy who was going to hold his program to a high standard. And if that comes at the cost of winning, you know what? Good. Because I'd rather be Illinois right now than Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, all these programs that are constantly in the news about what horrible things that these players and coaches have done. Because as even for like looking back on the winning as an Ohio State or Michigan State or Penn State fan, it'd be hard for me to appreciate that winning the same way as they would back when it happened.
You want to win the right way. And I mean, you want to build this program the right way. And we see that in college football and basketball right now. And I think that it's honorable what Lovie Smith did here. He made the right decision, and it shouldn't be questioned. I think when you look at Bennett, it's such a tough situation where he brought this on himself. I mean, and that's what the hardest thing about this is. And I think it's so interesting how writing the breaking news brief that I had to write last night when this comes out and this is reported finally. You go back and I'm looking at some articles and seeing what we talked about with Bennett just in the spring, right, before heading into to this
even
offseason.
in the fall during training camp. Yeah,
and it's so interesting to me where this is a quote from him where he said, "Last year when I came in, and this was talking previously before his freshman season. Last year when I came in, not a lot of people knew who I was. Now I have some accolades, a little bit of publicity." But nothing changes for me. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to work hard this year. Expectations are going to be raised, but I'm not living up to anyone else's. I'm living up to mine. And the question becomes, what were those expectations for yourself? And, if this is the things that you say, and he said plenty of comments like those, and he was super positive. He said that getting these accolades that he got after his freshman season wasn't going to change who he was. And that could be true, but what were the expectations he was setting for himself? And that's what's tough to see.
And Bennett Williams comes out today, and he had a statement on Twitter, and you read the statement, and he accepted responsibility for what he did, which I think was a very mature thing to do. You look at what he says and seeing everything that he says, that's exactly what you wanted to hear from him. But everyone's going to shift to what does this mean on the field. On the field, you just lost your best run support and run defender and safety. You lost your best pass coverage.
Your best player. You lost your best player.
Safety too. And now you have
you lost your best player on the team.
And now you have Sidney Brown and Tony Adams who have to really step up. And I think that we saw a little bit of a sign of Bennett Williams' future when they moved Tony Adams from corner to safety.
Well, let's be honest too. They might hope that Sidney Brown is
Sidney Brown reminds everyone of Bennett Williams.
Exactly.
He does everything the same way that Bennett Williams does, and it really stinks because if you had Bennett Williams and Sidney Brown on the field, that's a heck of a safety duo there. But you don't, and now Sidney Brown and Tony Adams are going to have to step up. They're really going to have to stay healthy because like we saw earlier in the year, Stanley Green and Michael Marquez have played a lot at safety during those first 4 games, and they really weren't cutting it. And that's why Tony Adams and Sidney Brown have to be healthy, have to make impacts on the field, because if they don't, this defense is going to really hurt. And you miss Bennett Williams right now, and you miss Pat Nelson right now, who's also not a part of this program and transferred after last year. And that moves also the onus to the class of 2019. You have to find a safety. You have to find a safety because you have a couple safeties on this roster, Kendall Smith and Dawson DeGroot, that aren't going to be Big Ten stars.
Yeah,
and they're not going to be Big Ten rotation players right now on starting wise. They're going to be,
special
teamers at best.
what this shows is just, this departure of Bennett now from the team. It just shows that there's going to continue to be roster turnover on this team, and that's something that you're going to get, and that's something that's going to happen. That's something that's going to happen when you go through this rebuild. And it was clear and obvious last season when at the end of the year you saw over 15 people transfer.
16 guys transferred, and now this year you've had 3 leave your program.
Exactly, and there's plenty of possibility that there could be more. You never know how it's going to go, and you never know what's going to happen, but it's going to continue to happen for this team while you continue to have this build. And the more you start bringing in better recruiting classes, it also will happen. And here's the thing: it's a good problem to have. It's not bad, but it's because it does show a little bit that you're getting better.
Roster turnover happens. There's 7 or 8 or 9 guys right now that are going to transfer after the end of the year.
Yeah.
I could say the names right now. We're not going to definitely do that. But there's 7.
Say the names.
There's about 8 guys right now that are not going to be on this team next year, and that's because this happens everywhere in college football. Obviously, you never want to kick a kid off your team for that. You never want to have the Ruben Munijay situation.
That's why this is different.
Right. But roster turnover is a real thing, and you have to address that in recruiting, and you have to find guys that are going to abide by the rules and abide by the standard that you've set. And Lovie Smith's bar of conduct and code of conduct is really high. His bar is high, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I don't want people to ever take a conflict up with that, because you have to understand, and I think a lot of people, especially Illinois fans, who have now for a decade just been accustomed to losing, and you want to be able to say, let's just do anything there is to win. Let's flip the script here.
Let's sell out.
And that's why you do see teams do that. But in today's age, with college football and college sports in general, and the way things are moving, this, I think, and this is something that I pride Lovie in, this is the right way to be running your program. And Josh Whitman, right? This is the right way.
And how about this?
Josh Whitman's a good point to bring up there, because it's not just Lovie, it's Josh all the way down. Josh has very high expectations. Go ahead, Benz.
And you talked about Baylor earlier, but look at where their program is now. And what did they sacrifice to get what? A couple Big 12 titles? They never even won a national title.
Getting Heisman? Yeah,
they had a couple fun moments, but at the end of the day, they basically sold their program for basically nothing. And now, I'd say they're probably... and leave alone all the stuff all the bad stuff about off the field. Their on the field product is no different than Illinois', I'd say right now. They're one of the worst teams in the Big 12, and that's not a great place you want to be, especially considering all the stuff on top of that you have to deal with.
Yeah, it's going to be. This is just a situation that Illinois fans, we'll have to get used to in a sense. And Isaac, did you have something on that?
And that's the thing. Like, I see everything on Twitter today, and everyone goes, "This is so Illinois." And it kind of is, because Illinois has had 2 freshman All-Americans in the past
I think it's so
decade.
Illinois in a different way. Because I think that it is so Illinois because,
it's
you
just
can't.
bad luck.
This is what I did.
It's the worst luck ever.
But and that's what I think it is, right? When I sent this, I sent this brief after I wrote the brief last night for the Daily Illini, and you can go download the Daily Illini app
on the new app
to go read that brief on the App Store or Android Google Play Store. But anyway,
that was very professional. I have to admit.
When I wrote this and I sent it, I texted somebody after I write it, and they wanted to see it, and I sent it their way. What I prefaced it with was, this is so Illinois. The week after you win a game, and you could have a week of sheer just positivity to talk about.
Right.
They go, no. Just because there's positive things to talk about this week, we can't have that. Let's throw in something negative. So I think that it is so Illinois in that sense, but it's a very different situation because of the fact that I think there's a lot of good to take away from it. And it's always a bummer to have that your best player on your team have to release the guy, but sometimes it happens, and I gotta admit, it might be better than having him transfer.
Right.
Because if he transfers, that means that can mean things are going worse.
And at the end of the day, Illinois has had 2 freshman All-Americans since the turn of the century. One of them, Mike Dudek, has 4 season-ending injuries, and the other one cannot abide by the rules and is kicked off the team. It's just a bad situation. You feel bad for Bennett, you feel bad for his family, and you feel bad for the University of the Illinois team and that team, because they could really have used him. And you hope that he learns from this scenario, because again, he's a sophomore in college. He's 19 years old.
Yep.
And we've all made mistakes. And how he builds off of this one is going to be a really, key sign for not just football, but for the rest of his life.
Yeah, this is not about Illinois and the program and then what they're putting on the field really, as much as this is about him now having to fix himself and him now realizing the next place he goes, he can't screw up. And so this is a learning experience for him, and really, and that's why I think in the note that he put up on Twitter after, thanking this program and thanking this school, because he knows he lets them down, and now the next step this was on him, and he needs to now build from that. So when we get back, we will talk a little bit Illinois basketball. Make sure
positivity,
you
baby.
Stick with us.
Brad Underwood positivity.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So make sure you stick with us. You're listening to Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU. Hello, and welcome back to Illini Drive. I'm Eli Schuster. I'm joined alongside Isaac Trotter, Brian Binns, and our producer, Tati Perry. Tati?
One of these days, I'm not going to say anything. It's going to be really awkward.
Well, I'm going to wait. And we're going to have just dead air for...
So that was the most words that
segment.
Tati's ever said.
That's the third time this show, by the way, that Tati's speaking, for those of you that just turned this on. We are Illinois.
Tati should do the whenever we come back from commercial. Tati should.
I think so. I think Tati
you should just say, I'm just here not to get fined.
For those people that don't know,
very much expecting.
Every time.
Tati's our producer. She's a little nervous. And she doesn't like to speak all the time on the radio, so we try to make it happen as much as possible.
Just to make her feel as bad as possible.
But we'll let her go.
Terrible.
We'll let her go back to listening to our lovely voices. I'm so sorry. I feel so bad for Tati. That's what she's got to do this whole show. Before the break, we were talking about Illinois football, talking about Bennett Williams, his departure from the team after he was dismissed. But we're going to move on. We're going to move on from kind of that negativity, and we're going to get into some Illinois basketball. Illinois basketball had their media days today in Rosemont. That is outside of Chicago. Everything they market says Chicago, but it's in Rosemont. And
Rosemont is the place where Illinois basketball had the best moment of its entire ever history.
Sure.
Darren Williams, the game tying 3 over Arizona, sends the game to overtime where Illinois wins 90-89. An 8-year-old Isaac was extremely happy with that outcome of that game.
I can imagine an 8-year-old Eli was paying absolutely no attention. So I think let's talk a little bit about this basketball team. Let's talk about Brad Underwood. Did we all listen to what Brad Underwood had to say today? What are some thoughts on that, Brian? You wrote up a little piece just based off of what Underwood said today. That'll be up soon for the Daily Illini, and you're just recapping Big Ten Media Day. But talk a little bit about what you heard from him, and what are some of your expectations?
Yeah, it was a lot of what he kind of told us back at Bielefeld on, what was that, last Friday?
Yeah.
On last Friday at the kind of the Illinois local media day. But I mean, it's safe to say I feel like he's very excited about this team. I mean, he said it himself that I'm very excited. So he brought up the youthful exuberance again. We talked about this on Tuesday, right? We talked about this on Tuesday. I mean, this is going to be a young team, and I think we're going to see a lot of stuff that happens to young teams. We're going to see moments where they look like this could be a tournament team, and we're going to see moments like, is this team going to win a Big Ten game because they can't rebound, and they're probably going to, I feel like,
can't guard the post,
and they can't guard the post, and I feel like there's going to be times this year,
and they got a tough non-conference schedule.
They're going to depend a lot on threes, so if their 3-pointers aren't falling, I think they're going to struggle to score sometimes. But I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a team that's a lot more fun than last year because they've got athletes, which I'm safe to say they did not have last year,
and they have shooters, right?
They've got shooters, which I can also say they did not have last year. And when you put those two things together with a guy like Brad Underwood, who I think runs a very, I want to say, innovative offensive. I haven't seen anything like what Brad Underwood does with the high post stuff that he does and a lot of the cuts that he does. I think that he does a lot of stuff that will really benefit the strengths of this team because they've got good passers. He says they've got great passers. He says he likes their basketball IQ. He's got good passers. He finally has guys who can finish above the rim and around guys and over guys. And he's got shooters. So when you help in on those athletes, they're going to be kicking out. They're going to be hitting threes. They're going to be playing hard defense. They're going to force a lot of turnovers. This is going to be a fun team. And I think that's, at the end of the day, even though they might not have a better record than last year, they might have a similar record to last year, I think you're going to see progress on the court similar to what you're seeing with Illinois football.
I think that Illinois, although the schedule's harder this year, and although the post play might not be quite as good as what you had last year with LaRon Black, I do have a little bit higher expectations for this team than last year's team. And I think here's why. Because you do have more talent at guard.
Even without all Big Ten Mark Smith?
Oh, even without all big. He's not going to put together the best freshman season of any freshman ever at Illinois. But yeah, I just think that you've raised the talent level at guard, and you have the ability to score at so many more facets of the game than you did last year. And I think I'm kind of buying Georgie Bashanchevili and Adonis De La Rosa that they're not going to kill you inside. That I do think this team could put themselves in a position to be on the bubble. Are they going to make the NCAA tournament? I don't think so. I think they're a year away from that still. But I think you've put yourself in a position to, surprise some people, just because Ayo Dosunmu is a talent you haven't had here. Trent Frazier, like we saw last year, is one of the best point guards in the Big Ten. Andres Feliz, that gives you a third point guard. Then you have guys on the wing like DeMonte Williams and Aaron Jordan who are legit Big Ten players. And Tevian Jones is a big-time athlete. Alan Griffin can shoot the rock. And Kipper Nichols is probably the most talented player on this team. So if you can get solid to adequate play out of that five between Adonis De La Rosa, Samba Kane, and Georgie Bashanchevili, this team, why not? Why can't this team be on the bubble? Because it really shouldn't be that hard for Illinois basketball to be on the bubble. And you're talking about 18, 19 wins to get on that thing. And I think that team could be able to do that.
And I think you look at Georgie, and eventually I'd assume Adonis slides into that role as well. And last year, Illinois had rebounding problems. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. And they had problems defending the rim. And I think a large part of that was because they were starting a bit front court that was, LaRon Black was 6'7". That's not a huge power forward. Michael Finke was 6'11", but he played like he was about 6'5". So I think
that's
this year
for him. I thought you were going to say about 6'3".
This year you're starting Georgie, who's 6'9", and he's a big guy. I mean, I stood next to him, and to me that looks like a guy who could easily compete in the Big Ten. And then you got Adonis, who's a bigger guy. That guy's a legit 7 feet tall. Samba off the bench is legit 7 feet tall. There were so many times last year where there would be rebounds just up in the air, and I especially saw it against Michigan State, where Jaren Jackson Jr. and Nick Ward and Miles Bridges would literally just jump up and reach over the top and just take the rebound.
Well, you saw how many alley-oop dunks too they would get in that game.
They would have front court players literally reach over the top of their rebounders and snatch the ball away and then put it in the basket. I don't think we're going to see as much of that last year because they have guys who, number one, are big. Or bigger than last year. And number two, guys who I think will compete. I'm not going to say LaRon Black was by all means soft on the boards. I think for what his talent level and his size, he was pretty good, especially when he was able to actually stay out of foul trouble and he was able to use his full aggression. But I think we can all agree that Michael Finke was not a good rebounder. He was not a bad rebounder. He was a horrible rebounder. And this year they're not going to have that kind of problem.
Aboigbedding was not a good rebounder at times either.
Yeah, what you have with this team, yes, you have the guys, but also you have the aggressiveness and you have the fit. You didn't have the fit last year, and again, are these bigs the bigs that are going to work for them for years to come? No, and maybe Georgie. I think Georgie's got the most potential. Samba,
Georgie and Samba, I think
Samba have a lot of potential. Yeah, they could be beasts, and I think Georgie has the most potential to do it right away. But I think that, these bigs, if Brad Underwood, got to have his choosings, these aren't necessarily the bigs that he'd grab right away. That doesn't mean they can't turn into great players, because I think that they will. But the biggest thing is, though, you just have a fit and you have an aggressiveness that this team completely lacked before this. And you have a group of guys that buy into a system. And so when you have...
Buy into the culture.
Yeah, buy into the culture. I mean, that was the biggest point that...
He says that every chance he can get.
After every game last season, he said... we're still trying to get that culture. We're trying to build that culture. And he's an extremely honest guy. And what you've seen this year from him already is saying that, no, these guys buy into this culture. These guys, they already get it. And so that's why it was a blessing for him to be able to go and get so soon this big of a roster that's his, that he can call his own. So I think that this team is in a very good place. Now, do I think that means this team is going to a tournament or this team is even on the bubble? For me, no. I don't think that they're even on the bubble, because you have a situation where we talk about the schedule it being so much harder, right? You
27 high major games. I think is what
strength of schedule matters the most, though, right now. Not wins.
Yeah. You have a non-conference schedule, though, that is extremely, extremely difficult.
Probably the number one hardest schedule in the country, right?
Yeah. And and when you have such a young team, there's going to be a learning curve that comes with that. And I think you're going to drop a good chunk of these non-conference games, and that's going to hurt you. And you can go and you need to go on a run in the Big Ten. But the problem is, you
got picked 13th in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
reason,
and I think
right.
and there's a reasons for that. So I think that there's got to be a lot of tempered expectations about this team because last year a lot of the similar things were said about them being a bubble team or possibly being a tournament team, and we saw what happened with that. And while this roster is completely better, you're gonna have a more watchable basketball performance from this team. You're gonna have a fun team. The issue with this team is the schedule right now. And if you handed this team the same schedule they had last year, I think this team goes to the tournament, right? But that's not the situation. And I think that's why you could see an extremely similar record as last year and possibly an even worse schedule of last year. Who knows? You got to see them play. That's what it comes down to. It's big. We got to see them go on the court and take that first game, and that can completely change for me. But for right now, I think it's going to be a very similar record to last year.
I think that, NCAA tournaments, I'm not taking anything away from those. Those are super important. But what you just described, I'm happy about. I'm happy that they're playing. I'm happy that they're playing a great schedule like this because Illinois is not going to go out and win the Big Ten this year. We can all agree about that.
They're probably not going to beat Gonzaga in the first game.
Right, number 5 team in the country.
And even if they do, they're definitely not beating Duke.
Right,
so.
Exactly.
But let's be honest. Illinois has a much better chance to win the Big Ten next year based off of this schedule, based off of getting these guys a chance to compete against the top in the Big Ten and the top in the country because Trent Frazier is going to be back here next year, most likely. And I'd assume he was going to be back here next year. And the only senior that you're missing from this entire team next year is Aaron Jordan, who's a role player at best. And you're going to, hopefully in recruiting, you're able to address,
I'd say they already have his replacement in Alan Griffin. I think Alan Griffin.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yes. I agree with you. I think he's even a little bit better than Aaron Jordan. He does a few more things than Aaron Jordan.
He will be better than Aaron Jordan.
Yeah.
That's
maybe not game one.
Not right now.
Over the course
he's not
of the
right
season.
now, but he'll be better.
And so that tough schedule is exactly what I want from this team.
Well, that's what I want too. I think I 100% agree, and I think that the only thing that I want to point out with that is that Illinois is competing in a lot of high stakes games this beginning of the season. They're competing against a lot of nationally televised. That's the biggest thing, right? With eyes, and we brought this up on the show before. Nationally televised games. A lot of eyes will be on them. I don't think, but I think fans, right? Fans of this team and people who watch closely of this team need to not make that mean to them that this is going to be a great season for Illinois. This is going to be because a lot of times people can think because they're in high stakes games, they're playing against primetime teams or primetime performances.
They're going to ramp up their performance.
That people could think, oh, this Illinois team must be great, or oh, this Illinois situation must be great. But those two things are completely different, and you have to just look at this roster and look at this team and look at the situation and not take too much out of the fact that they're playing some of these big name teams right now.
And I think Isaac's right is that the value in these non-conference games isn't wins and losses. It's finding out who's going to be a dog for you guys in the wars to come. Because I think last year we really kind of figured out like when the you know what hit the fan. Mark Smith was not ready, but
when the bright lights turned bright.
Trent Frazier was. And coming into this year, Mark Smith isn't part of your program anymore. And Trent Frazier's, like Brad Underwood talked about today, is that these are the guys who are going to be laying a foundation for the program to go from here. And I think this year it starts. And they could easily be buried and out of the tournament by the time conference play comes around. That's a very realistic thing that could happen.
It is, yeah.
They could very easily be like completely out of the tournament picture. But I don't think that matters as much as getting guys like Ayo Dosunmu this experience and getting guys like Trent Frazier's experience against teams that in a year or two you're going to be wanting to compete against in win or go home games.
And I will say, Illinois might have been picked 13th in the Big Ten by a handful of writers and a good amount, and I trust all of their evaluations. But there are going to be opportunities on the schedule to compete. Iowa and Nebraska and Northwestern and Rutgers and even Maryland a little bit. Like Illinois is going to have a chance to compete with these teams, and you saw last year how close they came to beating a couple teams. I think now with the extra talent that you have, you might be able to get over the hump.
I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think that they can take some more Big Ten games. The biggest issue for me is this non-conference schedule. That's what it is for me right now.
And listen, in this non-conference schedule, Illinois, if they just get one big-time win,
If you beat Gonzaga, that's a program-changing win. That's going to be on national television in the Maui game. Think of how many people are going to watch that happen.
What if you say you lose to Gonzaga, but what if you beat a team like Iowa State in that second game, and you kind of go into a consolation championship against
and you
them,
embarrass Taylor Horton-Tucker and prove him wrong?
I would assume who kills Taylor Horton-Tucker. Like, that would be huge for you. You beat a Georgetown team and the second game of the year. That would be helpful too. Beat Missouri. So then Illinois might end with a record in non-conference play of maybe like 8-7, or wait, you play 13. So say they're 7-6, but you have 2 really solid wins on there. That helps. That really helps.
Iowa State and Missouri, those are teams that you're really competing with for recruits, both, especially locally. Those Illinois guys, I mean, a win over Iowa State and a win over Missouri would do absolutely. It might not look great for your tournament resume because at the end of the year, those are probably going to be 2 about 5 teams around your record at the end of the year.
No, those teams are tournament teams.
Yeah. You think so? I don't know.
Iowa State's a tournament team.
We'll see.
Missouri,
I think we'll see because
Missouri's a bubble team.
Missouri's guards are not good, but their posts are as good as they're going to get.
I think the jury's still out on both those teams. But anyway, those are teams that you need to beat for recruiting because you lost Taylor Horton-Tucker and George Condit to Iowa State, and those are guys that I would like to see Illinois get. Those are guys, they're from the state. Those are guys that aren't getting a ton of national attention. They're not getting Duke, Kentucky. They're not Khalil Whitney. And then Mizzou, I mean, we're always fighting for guys from Mizzou.
Jeremiah Tillman and Mark Smith.
Jeremiah Tillman, Mark Smith. I mean, E.J. Liddell was in the Final 3, even though he wasn't really a factor there. But being able to point to those 2 teams and say, look, if you go to those 2 teams, we're going to beat you every time we see you because we are better than them and we are going to be better than them. So come here and win. Plus, that's something that Illinois hasn't been able to say like in the last 6-7 years. It's insane.
Plus, I think you'll see this young team kind of grow up before your eyes against teams like this. You can't really judge Illinois in the past. They started off, had great starts in November under John Gross because they were playing nobodies, and then when they get to Big Ten play, they get embarrassed because they're not the teams that they were. They go up to Michigan and get beat by 30. Wisconsin kills them by 25 points on a regular basis. With this team and with this schedule, I think you'll be able to see a completely different ball game because you're playing against top-notch competition right away. When you get into Big Ten play, you've kind of got those kinks and wrinkles out. The freshmen aren't really scared of the lights. They're used to it. Now they get a chance to go compete. Because if this team is under 500 heading into Big Ten play, but they go out and give me, 8 or 7 Big Ten wins, I think I take that and run. I'm completely happy with that.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I mean, there's definitely going to be some disappointing things about this team and early in this season. It's not going to be all positives, but there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of room for growth, and there's a lot of room for early growth when you go and you play some of these really, really good teams. So it's going to be exciting to see what they can do, and it's going to be really exciting to see what the 2 players they brought to Big Ten Media Day can do this year. Aaron Jordan as a senior, the only senior on this team, the guy who's a big influence. Let's see if he takes an interesting step forward. Who knows if he will, but he's a big part of what Brad Underwood's trying to do right now, and he knows that he can talk with them. And he's one of the guys that when they bring even recruits in right now, he's all in. He's trying to get them sold on this school. And then you have Trent Frazier, the other guy that's in Chicago today, and this is a guy that if he takes another step forward, then he's going to be a top point guard in the country. I mean, that's where he's at right now.
He already was, I would say, the second best freshman point guard in the country last year behind a guy called Trae Young, who was like the best guard in the country last year, period.
And so you have a situation here where even with these 2 guys that they brought today, there's so much potential out of them. And I think that there's a lot of intrigue with Trent Frazier.
Let's not take everything about Aaron Jordan and be like, oh, he's only for off the court stuff.
That's what I'm trying
because
to bring up.
Because on the court, there are some things that he does really well on the court. He can shoot the 3 at a lights out level, but he does it really well in transition when he can run to the corner and get his feet set and fire.
Well, that's perfect for this offense.
And Andres Feliz and Trent Frazier, you're going to be able to do that more. And last year when he got off to that really hot start from 3, things didn't happen well toward the middle of the year and in Big Ten play because he was the second guy in the scouting report.
There was no one else who could create him an open shot.
Now you got guys to spread the floor. Now when he's on the floor, he's the 5th option. That'll open it up for him. I would not be shocked at all if he averages 8.5, 9 points a game this year because he has more opportunities.
Good efficiency too.
Yeah,
and honestly, that's all you want from a guy on the wing. I mean, if I can get 8, 9 points from all 5 of the guys we talked about before, even if Kipper Nichols doesn't average like 17 points, if he averages 12 on good efficiency, I think the rest of the roster can make up for the lack of scoring.
Yeah,
if Kipper Nichols is averaging 12, that means you're getting production from other people, which is a good sign.
I think for Illinois fans out there, take value in the good stuff that happens this year. Don't get too caught up in the bad because this is a super young team. They're going to make stupid mistakes. They're going to have plays like last year where DeMonte Williams is throwing the ball over the court late in games. They're going to have plays like that. That's what happens with young teams. Keep your mind set on the vision here and where we're going. And I know it's tough because we've been saying this forever, but I think you can see in both what the coaching staff is saying, and even though that's not the best way to measure how well things are going, I think we can see that both in recruiting, they're getting in the conversation with guys they weren't getting in earlier. Right. You saw last year they were competing with teams that I don't think they got blown out by Michigan State when they played them in John Gross's last year. They did not get blown out by them last year the first time they played at Illinois. And so I think you can see where this team is going. There's going to be stupid moments this year. There's going to be moments that say, ugh, we're never going to make it. But keep in mind, take pride in the moments where Illinois is going bucket for bucket with teams like Gonzaga and teams like Iowa State and teams and tournament teams in the Big Ten. Take pride in those moments and really kind of believe that this is where we're going.
And show up to support this team.
Them. Yeah.
Because this is the most fun Illinois team that you've had in quite some time. And
since 2013 with Brandon Paul and DJ Richardson hit their senior year. I mean, arguably,
it's more fun than any team in the Gross era. I can literally guarantee
Except
you that.
the first season. That's the only first season.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was kind of fun.
And that's not even, I don't even count that as the Gross era. That's the extended Bruce Weber era.
So basically, there's a lot of excitement going around this team, and people need to make sure that they're really zoning in now on Illinois basketball because it's right around the corner, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Get on now while it's not cool.
Get on now. Don't jump on a bandwagon.
Be a trendsetter. Come on.
Don't jump on a bandwagon.
Get on the wagon. Let's go. I'm driving.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm just trying to think of Brian Vince on a wagon.
No, we got to get off the air. All right. Well,
I've got the look.
I appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be back on Tuesday. Sorry, it is Thursday. We'll be back next Tuesday. And there's going to be an interesting Illinois game to watch this weekend. Thank you for listening. This is Illini Drive here on 107.1 WPGU.